I'm Father Michael Orsi. I'm your host for Action for Life Television, that good news program which brings you the big G for the gospel of Jesus Christ and the little g, all the good things that people do to put that gospel of life into action. You know, you often hear about the separation of church and state, and a lot of organizations, especially those organizations involved with pro-life, they sometimes, they got to try to tiptoe around things so that it doesn't look like that they are politically involved. And yet, we've talked about this before, gang. Politics and morality go together. Jesus tells us we must be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. We have a dove with us today because this lady, she is the director of Citizens for a Pro-Life Society. Her name is Monica Migliorini Miller. And I, for full disclosure, must say, have known her for the better part of 20 years. She is a real warrior for life, and she's a well-known author, a well-known speaker, and somebody who's been on the front lines for a long time. So, Monica Miller, Director, Citizens for a Pro-Life Society. Well, do you get involved politically? Oh, what a way to start, huh? Loaded question.
Well, I would say, Father, in terms of my pro-life work, I'm not directly focused on politics, only to the extent that, politics may enter into our efforts to defend innocent unborn children from abortion. For instance, Citizens for a Pro-Life Society with Created Equal and the Pro-Life Action League in Chicago. We will be at the Supreme Court on December 1st with our pro-life signs and abortion victim photography, while the Supreme Court justices are going to be hearing arguments in the Mississippi case, Dobbs versus Jackson. I suppose you could call that getting involved in politics. And of course, we're always very concerned about elections because we want to put in place legislators and, who are going to defend human life. And
okay, so you have a 501(c)(3).
501(c)(3), yeah.
Yeah, C3, and that means what?
Well, it means that I can't directly campaign nor financially support a particular candidate. Okay, as a director of Citizens for a Pro, I can't have promotional materials for a particular candidate on our website, or promoting a particular candidate on our email list. That has our masthead as Citizens for a Pro-Life Society. Now, as a private citizen, I can do whatever I want, but our group can't. That's the difference. Now, we can always, of course, put out information. One candidate says this, the other candidate says comparison sheets, and we've done that. I mean, we have blitzed parking lots and church parking lots and handed this stuff out, but it has to be not in support of a particular candidate versus another one. That's basically the federal rule. I think 10 to 15% of a non-for-profit group can use 15% of their time, their activity, and possibly even their budget in politics. But it is the 85 to 90% has to be stay clear of that.
Okay, well, that 10, 15%, have you ever used the 10 or 15%?
I would say no.
No.
Not to directly support a particular candidate as Citizens for a Pro-Life Society. I mean, Father, it's kind of, frankly, it's the same thing for you. I mean, your church, your parish can't, if you want to follow the rules, can't directly support a particular pro-life candidate and lobby or a campaign against a particular by name. Okay, I mean, you can always say we want to put pro-life people into office. You can get away with that, of course, but of course that's what we do.
Okay, but Monica, what about sometimes there are candidates that are so offensive to life, very, very offensive to life. How do you get the message out that this is a bad person? And I'm saying it is a bad person.
We're not judging hearts, we're just judging what they say.
No. I hear exactly what I understand exactly what you're asking me, Father. About 6 weeks prior to the last national election, so that would have been November 2020, where Biden and Trump were running against each other, our organization took out 2 ads, newspaper ads. One was a full-page ad in the Washington Examiner, and one was a half-page ad in the National Catholic Register.
Now, I know all about that. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very familiar with that because I was one of the signatories of that document. Please continue.
Well, and the point that we were trying to make, it was an appeal to the bishops. So we weren't directly saying anything about Biden, but we wanted the bishops to point out that this man who promises to codify Roe v. Wade, endorses and supports abortion for the full term of pregnancy, has revoked his support for the Hyde Amendment, and so on. The bishops have to say that he should not be receiving Holy Communion, and that was our message. And so we were trying to encourage the bishops to speak up. And we knew that, first of all, we're going into a national election. Catholics should not be voting for that kind of man. And
wow, gang, that sounds like a no-brainer to me. All right, continue.
Well, and again, we did have the same ad in the National Catholic Register, to the register's credit, but they had me edit some things out. I couldn't mention Biden by name specifically. They were a little afraid. I think they ran it past their attorneys, and they were a little nervous. But I was okay with that.
I was okay with it.
So we've done that. Citizens for a Pro-Life Society spent $700 to send a letter on our letterhead for Citizens for a Pro-Life Society. We sent a letter leading into the election to every bishop in the United States, again, urging them. I kind of transferred what I had said in the ads, basically an open letter to the bishops, and transferred it to a private letter to each one of the bishops. Again, so if you want to call that politics, okay, fine, but it really has to do with ecclesial integrity. And we have a Catholic running for office who supports the slaughter of innocent unborn children, not to also mention that he officiated at 2 same-sex marriages, and he's on board with the transgender movement. I'm sorry, but this means that he cannot be passing himself off as a devout Catholic. And
Well, let me ask you this question.
A lot of times people are afraid. They say, we're going to lose our tax-exempt status. Now, folks, believe me, when you hear tax-exempt status, it doesn't mean that your church, your parish, is going to be assessed for taxes and then lose tax exemption. It doesn't mean that. It means you, as an individual, will not be able to deduct your charitable donation given to churches that promote a certain candidate over another candidate. That's what that means. Most of you, maybe there's a few of you out there, but you didn't tell me who you are. aren't giving that much money that it's going to make that much of a difference on your income tax return. Now, Monica, I've studied this. It's called the Johnson Amendment. Lyndon Johnson in 1953 was mad at some nonprofits because they wouldn't support him in Texas when he was running for the Senate. He gets elected, and what happens is he says, I'm going to get you guys now. And he gives us the Johnson Amendment, which says churches, well, I beg your pardon, it doesn't say churches. Nonprofits cannot get involved in endorsing a political candidate. Lawyers said, oh, it applies to the churches too. It was never meant to apply to the churches. But right away, what happens is, oh, it meant to apply to the churches. And everybody gets woofed off. Churches, we lose our tax-exempt status. And what happens is the church becomes impotent out of fear. Now, Monica, you can react to that if you want.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's
You see, I told you.
well, I think there's been a terrible overreaction on the part of the Catholic Church in this country for fear of this so-called losing our tax-exempt status, which has caused parishes and pastors of parishes to be very, very leery, to be very, very hesitant, to allow any kind of political, even like I said, the handing out of comparison sheets. One candidate supports abortion for the full 9 months compared to the pro-life. That is perfectly legitimate.
It sure is. It is perfectly legitimate. Do you understand? It's allowed. Okay.
It's allowed. But there's been a lot of controversy over literally decades with certain, churches, maybe I could say the majority or at least half, whatever it is, but that won't allow the distribution of comparison sheets.
Hi, this is Monica Migliorino Miller, Director of Citizens for a Pro-Life Society. On September 15, 2017, in 3 different cities in the United States, pro-lifers entered the waiting rooms of abortion clinics to talk to the mothers scheduled for abortions. And by refusing to leave the clinics when told to do so by law enforcement, they offered an act of nonviolent defense of unborn children about to be aborted, and this resulted in the pro-lifers being arrested. Once inside, small teams of pro-lifers quietly approached mothers seated in the waiting rooms and offered them roses as a symbol of life. Attached to each rose was a card, and on one side of the card there was written these words: "You were made to love and to be loved. Your goodness is greater than the difficulties of your situation." Circumstances in life change. A new life, however tiny, brings the promise of unrepeatable joy. On the other side of the card were phone numbers to local pregnancy health centers. Those involved in the Red Rose Rescue talked to women scheduled for abortions, extending them words of encouragement and offers of material aid. In addition to reaching out to the mothers, the rescuers chose to remain in the clinic as an act of solidarity with the unborn children scheduled to be put to death by abortionists. The Red Rose Rescues did not block the doors to the abortion center or the hallway leading to the procedure rooms. When police officers arrived on the scene, pro-lifers continued to have conversation with the mothers, or they opted to sit on the floor and quietly pray or sing hymns until they were placed under arrest. The Red Rose Rescue is an act of charity on behalf of the moms scheduled for abortions and, of course, for the innocent unborn who are about to be put to death. Mother Teresa characterized her work as going into the dark holes of the poor. That is what we had hoped to do in the Red Rose Rescue, to go into the darkest holes of the poor and offer encouragement to the mothers and to be a sign of hope, to bring peace and the presence of God in the very place where the unborn are rejected and put to death. Those involved in the Red Rose Rescue included 2 Catholic priests, veteran pro-life activists such as Joan Andrews Bell, and young people from the millennial generation as well. We hope that others in the pro-life movement will also conduct Red Rose rescues. We hope that those who participate in these acts of defense will be supported. But most of all, we hope that we will simply recommit ourselves to building a culture of life. God be with you all. Thank you.
Hey gang, I know a lot of you sometimes can't watch all of our episodes of Action for Life. However, we have a solution for that. All you have to do is go to YouTube and search for Action for Life Florida. And you can catch up on all the shows, and guess what? Extra added bonus, you get to hear my weekly homily. So, YouTube and you make a fine couple. As you can imagine, producing this wonderful program, Action for Life, it costs a great deal of money. We're going to need your help. So if you would like to donate to keep this good news program on the air, please go to your computer, your cell phone, actionforlife.net. Thought for the day. A lot of people think that the religion is only for the next world. Well, it's very much for this world too. It has an impact on our daily lives. Make sure that you take time to know the candidates who are running for office and then to vote for those candidates who are pro-life. Monica, I want to ask you something. I'm not trying to put you on the spot here. Okay, is this fear legitimate? Or is this just using something to avoid dealing with recalcitrant politicians? Churches have kept quiet.
Yeah, it's
Afraid. Well, lose our tax exempt status. Well, I just blew that out of the water. They're afraid of public opinion. They're afraid of the media. They're even afraid of their co-religionists. Everybody's afraid of something, and what happens is we end up doing very little, except for people like you who know that there's more than one way to skin a cat. That's a technical term, folks. Okay.
Yeah, I have 2 cats.
We don't want to skin any cat. That's just a phrase. I like cats. Okay. Especially if they're Catholic. Go ahead.
No, I think that that certainly is true. I think that there is a fear that the church will be accused of meddling in politics, and that is somehow off limits. If you're a religious institution, stay in your place, right?
Yeah.
Stay in your place. Don't cross this boundary. You should be concerned about, taking care of the poor. And by the way, here's the thing. Father, it really depends on what issue you're talking about. Because there are plenty of Catholics and pastors of churches who have no problem getting involved in politics when it comes to certain other issues: immigration, racism, sexism, equal rights, whatever. But when it comes to issues having to do with marriage, the family, and the sanctity of life, all of a sudden, stay home, stay in your place. Don't go past the boundaries of your parish.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, isn't that the sad truth? Isn't that the sad truth? People can be as political as they want, as long as they're political about certain issues.
Politically correct issues that our culture and hey, just to be fair, these are perfectly legitimate issues that, it's not as if these are bad things to be involved with, but it is very selective. That's only the point I'm trying to make. It is selective. Now, we have a parish here. I live in South Lyon, Michigan, and the local parish has posters up in the windows. 40 Days for Life, God is pro-life, and they'll even have once a year the Cemetery of the Crosses. Some people might know what that is, but the cemeteries, the Cemetery of the Crosses is a way to visualize how many unborn children are literally executed every day.
Right.
And it's very, very visually stunning.
And they put crosses all over, maybe the front of the church. There could be hundreds of little white crosses, and that shows people this is the reality of what's taking place. I remember when I was living in Michigan, the church I was helping out at had the crosses out, the cemetery marking the number of little babies being aborted. There were some people passing by. I am offended. I mean, this is one of the greatest hoaxes in the whole world. As soon as somebody doesn't like what they see, I'm offended. And then we have to, we'll take them down. We'll apologize to you. Baloney! The truth might hurt, but it's true.
If you're referring to Holy Spirit,
Am I?
yeah, in Brighton, Hamburg, Brighton,
Right.
you should know that in November of 2018, so not so long ago, we buried an aborted baby in that parish cemetery where you used to help out.
Yes.
Yeah, now there's actually an aborted baby, Michael Gabriel, buried at the Holy Spirit Cemetery in Brighton.
It makes it even more real, doesn't it? Even more real.
Well, a little story there. In 2016, a Michigan abortionist by the name of Michael Roth lost the lease to his abortion clinic. It was in a high-rise building in Novi, Michigan. He was there for 20 years, and the landlords just decided whatever, they weren't going to renew his lease. So this is an abortionist who didn't have a clinic. He tried to set up his clinic a couple of other places, but once the landlords found out, because pro-lifers like Lynn Mills of Michigan ran ahead, told the landlords, hey, this is not just a gynecological office. He lost leases left and right. Now he has no place to kill babies. He got into a car accident in West Bloomfield, Michigan, and his car was impounded because he actually hit a pedestrian. Thankfully, he didn't kill the pedestrian. When the cops investigated the car, they open up the trunk and they find the remains of 15 aborted babies in the trunk. So now Michael Roth is known as the trunk abortionist. I managed, after 2 years, it took us 2 years, Citizens for a Pro-Life Society, going through the Oakland County Medical Examiner's office, because that's where the babies were, to try and get the babies to bury them. Finally, and I have to say, through some help from the then pro-life Attorney General, Bill Schuette, the babies were put on our custody, entrusted to us. And so one of the 15 we buried at that parish where you.
Well, that's very, very poignant story, and at least their baby has a decent burial. Right. You know, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about losing a tax-exempt status. Do you know how many churches have lost their tax-exempt status since 1954? One. It was upstate New York. I think it was the Binghamton area, and it was because the church put up a sign, billboard, do not vote for Bill Clinton. They lost their tax-exempt status for about 2 months,
I think
and then it was returned to them.
It was a Protestant church, the Church of Pierce Creek
Yes.
in Upper New York.
Yeah. So I'm asking you, what are we afraid of? What are we afraid of? The great John Paul, magnificent Pope, used to say again and again and again, be not afraid. Be not afraid. And sometimes we let fear immobilize us. This has happened with the churches. The churches are now, for the most part, they are impotent in our country. They are losing their raison d'etre to speak the truth to power, to give society a moral compass, and to give direction to their people who are longing to live out the truth. Monica, you are a real warrior for life. I've known you for many, many years. I think your organization, what you're doing, and I applaud you for being bold sometimes and being, that person who is innocent as a dove and wise as a serpent. I want you to keep up your good work. Ladies and gentlemen, Monica's for action, I'm for action, and I hope you are too. We would like to thank our generous sponsors for their wonderful support. Thanks for watching. Please join us next time for Action for Life. I'm for action, and I hope you are too. I'm Father Michael Orsi. I am your host for Action for Life Television, that good news program which talks about the gospel of Jesus Christ, the big G, and the little g, all the good things that people are doing to put the gospel of life into action. So please join us for the next episode of Action for Life.